So if you're like me and you want to create your own custom mod with your own custom items, but you don't want to override existing items, this video will explain how we can do that. In this video, we're going to create a custom deck graphic. It should be pretty simple, but there are a couple steps, so I'm going to walk you through the basics. We're going to need a few things. The first thing we're going to need is Unreal Engine. If you haven't installed it already, you're going to want the Epic Games Launcher. There's a section for an Unreal Engine. We're going to want to click on Library, and then select the engine version by clicking the plus, selecting the drop down, and we want 4.27.2. This is going to match the version of Unreal Engine that Session itself uses. So I already have it installed here, but once you select it, you'll click Install, and it's going to take a bit of time. But while we're doing that, there's a link in the description for an Unreal Engine project. It's called Custom Gear. You can see it here. And it's about 3 gigs. And so you're going to want to download that and extract it somewhere that you're going to be able to find it later. For me, I have it under Documents, Unreal Projects, and here we see it as Custom Gear. So if we click in here, there's a Session Game folder, and then here's all of our folders here. And once you have Unreal Engine downloaded and everything's installed, we can click on this file here, the customgear.u project, or if you don't have file extensions on, you should see it as Unreal Engine project file. But if we double click this, it's going to open up our Unreal Engine project. I already have it open, so it's going to open it up again, but that's fine. But essentially we're greeted with, let me just close this stuff real quick. But we're greeted here with a couple different folders. Some of these are my folders, but you should see most of them here. Essentially, this is going to map to the file structure and the folder structure that exists within Session. The idea is that we're kind of reproducing that environment in our Unreal Engine project so that we create things, we're able to base them on existing files in game. And we'll get into that in a little bit. The most important folders that we're going to be looking at is Custom Gear and Customization. So these two are going to be pretty important. Custom Gear is where all of our own modded stuff is going to live. And Customization, we're mainly going to be using it when it comes time to reference existing files and stuff in game. We're going to pull them from these different folders, and we're actually going to create a couple folders as needed. And we'll get to that here in just a second. Before I continue, there's a couple other things I'm going to be using in this video. First off is image editing software. I'm going to be using Photoshop. You can use GIMP or anything else. And then secondly, we're going to be using Blender. You don't need Blender for this tutorial, but I figured I'd include a little section about it just to show you how I was able to get the correct, I guess, templating solution for our deck graphic later to make sure that we get it as perfect as we can. But first off, let's just get started by creating the first file that we need for our custom item. So it's under Custom Gear, and then in the CIT folder. You should see 2 of these by default. You can refer to these if you want to. These are both shoes. This one's one of mine. But what we're going to want to do is right-click in here, come down to Miscellaneous, and then click on Data Asset. That's going to ask us for an asset class. We're going to want to click on Customization Item Definition. If you can't find it, you can type in item in the search. You should see Customization Item Definition. So click that and then click Select. And now give it a name. I'm going to name mine something. I'm going to name it Jury from Street Fighter. I'm going to make a deck graphic based off a board that I have. Now we can double click this. And now we have this window that pops open. It has a couple of things in here. And if we look at that, it says company ID, category ID, display name. So a bunch of things that right now are pretty vague to us, right? So how do we fill this out, right? Right now, this stuff's pretty vague to us. We don't really know what any of this stuff means. Now I could tell you, put this here, put that number there. The problem I find in doing that and explaining a tutorial like that is that it doesn't really teach you anything. So the best way for us to teach ourselves on how to create these things is to refer to the actual game assets, right? Because at the end of the day, we're essentially recreating something that the people who are making session are doing every day when they want to create their own stuff, right? So the easiest way to do that is to explore the game files. Well, how do we do that? We need something like umodel or fmodel. And I'll have a link to fmodel in the description. I personally prefer this over using umodel. It's a little bit more intuitive. The UI is a bit better. But you can use umodel if you're more comfortable with it. But me personally, I'm gonna be using fmodel for this. So to get started with fmodel, you'll just download it, extract it somewhere, and you'll load the fmodel file. And we're gonna want to click on directory, and we're gonna want to click on selector. If this has already come up for you when you first load it, that's fine. Essentially, we just want to be here. Now we're gonna want to add our game. You see, I already have session in here, but by default, you're not going to see this. So you're going to want to click on this thing here to open this up. We can see name and directory. Now we want to click on the three little dots here, this little button, and we're going to want to navigate to our session game folder. So in this case, I have it in another drive in your Steam library, and here's our session game folder, and we can see our content folder and binaries. Now, if you don't know how to find your session game folder, what you're going to want to do is open up Steam and then find session in your game library, right-click it, hover over Manage, and then click on Browse Local Files. This is going to take you directly to the game folder. We can click in here and then copy this path, and then come in here when we're selecting our directory here, paste it in, hit Enter. And now you'll see we're back at that same location. We can come into game as the session game and then click select folder. Now we don't want to click OK here. We actually want to click add, this little add button. And that's going to add it up here. And then we can click OK. Once you do that, it's going to prompt you to restart it. Just click OK. It'll restart in just a second. It's really quick. You'll be then greeted with this screen. And on the Archives tab, you'll see this pack file here. Now by default, it's going to have a little red X, a little red mark here, and you're not going to be able to interact with it. What we actually need to do is click on directory and then click AES, and this is where you're going to want to put in the AES key. I'm not going to go into details on how you do that here. Instead, I would look at other resources and how to find that. But essentially, you want to paste it in there, and if you've done it correctly, you should see the green little check mark here. And now we're going to be able to click onto this. You can double click on it, and it's going to take us over here into the folders. And you're going to see two things: engine and session game. We don't care about engine, we only care about session game. So we're going to expand it, and then we're going to expand content. Now this is essentially the files and folders for everything in session, right? So we can see some of these are actually going to line up with what we have in Unreal Engine. So if I click over here, you'll see art, that's the same. And then we have the more important things like customization, that's over here. Same thing with data, maps. So some of these are going to relate to that. And we'll go more into detail on kind of how that's going to work for us later. So we want to make a custom deck graphic, right? So the location for deck graphics, we could drill around here and find it, but I'll tell you where it is. It's under customization, right? And that's under skateboards. And now it's under deck graphics, and here's all the brands. And so you can click into one of these. Like let's say we can look at no comply. You'll see there's three folders. One's a CIT, one's a material, and one's a texture. Now CIT, that's related to the kind of the folder we have here. Now the CIT folder here is not in this folder path here. For our custom mods, we want the CIT folder to be in the custom gear folder, because this is where the mod loader is going to look for our custom CIT files. So we're not going to create it exactly like this, but the files, the type of file is essentially the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer to a board that I know has a similar size to what I'm looking for. So if you're doing a board, you might look for a board that you kind of want to create there's a specific type of clothing that you want to create something based off of. You might find that clothing item, right? In this video, like I said, we're going to be doing deck graphics, so we're just going to be focusing on deck graphics. So I know that the board I want to look for is under this brand suck here. And again, we have these 3 folders. So let's open up CIT. You'll see it took us over to this tab here for packages. This is basically all the files that are in that folder. You can see the file path here. And all of these are all individual deck graphics. Now the naming convention here isn't exactly just some random string of stuff, right? If you want to follow it along, it's CIT, then it's underscore, and then there's 2 letters here. DG are actually for deck graphic. Then it's the brand, and then the name. So you'll see different conventions like that. If we actually look at the textures, it's text, TX for texture, DG for deck graphic, and so on, similar to before. So the naming here you can kind of understand what the files are. It's not too important, but we will need to refer to specific file names later, and you'll see that when we get to it. Now again, what we want to look at is the CIT file. So let's click into the CIT folder. Again, it's going to bring us over here so we can look at the files. And I'm going to click on Lady Smoker. That's the one that I want to look at. I'm going to hold Control and scroll up just so that we can take a better look at this, increase the font size. And now here we see it's in this JSON format. Essentially, it's just a UAsset file, but it's in a text format essentially that we can read without, having to look at a bunch of, hexadecimal or something. So here's everything, and it might seem a little confusing at first, but if we take a look at, this stuff in yellow, you'll see these are the different keys. And you'll see here company ID. Well, that's the same thing as here. Same thing with category ID. Display name. There's some extra stuff in here, but that's okay. Display texture. So these are one-to-one mapping to over here. So essentially what we're kind of doing is we're recreating this of Unreal Engine. So what can we learn from this? Well, the first thing we can look at is the company ID. You'll see here they set it to 22. All right. So what does that mean? What is 22? If we click on the tab thing over here, the little tab button, we can click back over to folders, and all the companies actually live in one file. It's under customization, brand assets, and if we click on brand assets and then click on the packages tab up here, you'll see there's one file for database companies. If we double click on this, it'll open it up. Again, we can scroll in and zoom with Control. And here's all of the companies in the game. Here's Adidas, Almost, right? We scroll all the way down to the bottom, and then here's 0, right? So here's all the companies in the game. So how do we find the ID that we want? Well, they all have, if you look at these matching braces, these curly brackets, you'll see inside of here, there's a company ID, a bunch of other stuff, name, here's sponsor me. So if we look for suck is actually going to be in here. It's right here. We can do that by Control F. We can type in suck and then hit enter. We'll find it that way as well. But you'll see here the company ID is 22. So that's how the name, or rather how the number is matching up from this 22 to this 22. So that means that this item is part of the company suck here, and it has a bunch of other information on here. There's the texture and stuff for it, but we don't really care about that. But now we understand what the company ID is. Now, if you want to find the company that you want to add your item to that already exists in the game, you could do that. For the sake of the video, we're going to use the company 0. And I don't mean the skateboard brand 0, I mean the number 0 for the company ID. And that's related to Creature Studio, which if you know, we spelled it wrong. But Creature Studios has a company ID of 0. So they're always going to be here. We can rely on them being here no matter what happens with any other companies in the game. So we're going to use 0. It's just, or Creature Studios, we'll just call it Creature Studios. We're going to use the company ID here 0 for the sake of this video, just because it's a little bit more safer. At some point in the future, I'd like to look into custom companies, but for right now, we're just going to use 0, right? So can we fill out the next thing? Well, yeah, we actually can. And if we look here, in our board, Lady Smoker, you'll see they use category ID of 512. So where does that come from? Well, we can see it here, and also if we look at the mod loader, you'll see it's also listed out here as well. Essentially, we don't really need to know exactly how all this works. The important thing is that if you're going to make something, you're going to refer to some sort of reference. So one way is to define the item that you want to kind of create something based on, and you use that same category ID, or just look at this table in here. So again, deck graphics is 512. So this is what we want to use. So in this case, we're going to type in 512. All right. Now it wants a display name, and we can just literally just type in what we want to call the mod, or rather the item, the skateboard. So I'm going to call it jury. I'm going to put 8.0 in here for the board size, 8 inches, similar to what all the other boards do. But if you wanted to name this something completely different, if you didn't want to include the board size, if you had a custom model, if you get that into detail, you can name this whatever you want. It doesn't matter. This is just for the store and whenever you look at your items in game. And there's a couple other things down here, and we'll get to those in just a second. So we see here there's a display texture, there's item meshes, and for the texture, we can actually click on it. We can click on the string here, which says gain customization, this purple thing here. If we click on this, it's actually going to open up a new tab with a texture, and you'll see this is actually the texture that's used in the store. So when you're navigating, you're trying to find an item to buy, this is the texture that it uses. And a couple of other important bits of information we can actually see here is the size, and that's 256 by 256. So that's the default size that you're going to use when we create our own icon. So it's good to reference that here as well. We can actually close out the company's table here. So we could do that now, but we don't really have anything built out yet, right? We can actually start preparing some of the stuff we need for our item definition here. So you'll notice here there's a section for item meshes. There's only one in here. It's kind of hard to file the braces, but essentially we just want one of these. So we can click on the plus button. It'll insert one element. That's one item mesh. And this item mesh is actually going to refer to the actual skateboard in game. So the 3D model of the skateboard. So that's what that is. We can expand this 0 here. It's the first one and the only one of the item meshes that we want. And you can see here again, this is going to match the same thing over here, right? So we have our AMXX static mesh, AFXX static mesh, etc. These three are all none, but the top one is filled in with something. If we click on this again, if we click on this, you'll see there's a weird texture and stuff in place, but and the bottom's not filled out. But this is our skate deck, right? So we're going to want to be able to refer to this, but if we click in here, we don't see, we're not finding that model. So we're going to have to find a way to reference it. And we're going to get into that in a second. First, we're just going to fill out the rest of this real quick. The next thing and the last thing that we're going to need to add is item materials. There's actually 3 of them. You can kind of see here, if you look, they all have the material slot. You can see this one is MATID, that's material ID, board graphic bottom. There's also a wood top and a wood bottom. Those have to do with the wood material that you'll see on the top and bottom of the board. Typically, I'm not sure when you see the bottom, it could be through wear and tear, but the top is whenever you have grip tape that you maybe have a cutout in, that color is going to show through with this top material. And like I said, the bottom is probably something similar. Now for this deck graphic, they're not even using one on top, which means that there's probably a default value. For the sake of the video though, we're going to create one, or set one up rather. And like I said, there's also the graphic bottom. So in order to get that set up over here, we go under item materials. We want to click on the plus button 3 times. You'll see it says 3 array elements, and we have 3 here. We can actually pre-fill out the slot stuff by clicking on here. You can double click. It'll select the whole section here. We can copy it. We can actually expand these 1, 2, 3, or rather 0, 1, 2, and expand the slot. That'll be the first thing down here. Expand material slot. They'll say none. We're just going to paste this in. So no quotes, just the text. So you don't want to include the quotes on the side here. Just double click in here, copy, place that one, scroll down, and this one, right? So again, these are the wood top and bottom, but we haven't filled these out yet. I'm going to click save, and I'm actually going to come into the Unreal Engine itself and click on File and Save All. If you have problems later on, you're definitely going to want to make sure that you've actually saved all files. We might get to a point in the project where we're ready to go, ready to see our stuff in game, but we might be missing some things. A common issue is that it's not saved. So just go to File and click Save All, and that'll make sure everything's good to go. So like I said, we're going to want to pull in our path here, but the problem is that we can't actually, how do we get this, right? Well, here it's in here and we can look at it, but we can't exactly type in anything, right? I'm not able to type in my asset's just not here. So the way we do that is we actually need to include that asset in our folder structure, and it doesn't have to be the exact one from the game. It can just be a dummy file. So I included with my own zip file, there's a couple different things, and one of them is actually just a dummy cube. We're actually going to use that. Let me pull it up here. So it's this FBX file. And we're going to use this as kind of a fake reference to the board in the actual game that we want to refer to. So this is the folder path, and we can actually look at it in fmodel as well. It's under game, which is under content. Customization. Let's collapse this real quick. So customization, skateboards, decks, default, base mesh. Then click on the packages here, and here's all the different board sizes. So there's 725, 75. We can click on any one of these and look at them. You'll see this one's fairly thin. We click on 875, it's way thicker, right? We're essentially going to want to create the same folder structure path and have a file at the very end. Now I'm actually going to export the model from fmodel from the game files for a specific reason. I'm going to bring it into Blender, and the reason I'm going to do that is because I don't know how to make the texture. I don't know how the texture works. So for me, the easiest way to figure out how to do that is to just get the 3D model and see how they're mapping the textures. Now this part of the video you don't need to do. If you want to skip over this part, you can. I'm going to have, again, in my files, a Photoshop document, and essentially it's just going to have a way for you to create our deck graphic and make sure that it's going to fit properly on the board. But if you're interested, you can follow along or just watch and see how I go about it and learn something. But like I said, you can skip over this if you want. You don't need to do this. But if you want to do it, the first thing we're going to want to do is we can click on settings. Now, we can use the UE formats, mesh format here, but we're going to have to install this third-party Blender thing here. You can see it has a link. I'm not sure if clicking on it works. You might need to just Google it or basically search it up. But an easier solution is to just click on the GLTF 2.0. And if you're using UModel and you want to export it that way, there is a setting where you can then set it to GLTF as well. But this is what we're going to use for the format. We're going to click OK. Now we're going to come back over here to packages, and we want to export out this one here. We want the 8-inch board. If you want one of these other ones and you want to take a look at those, you can. But I'm going to look at this one. I'm going to right-click this and click Save Model. Now this thing, if you don't have it expanded, you can click on this, and it'll say that it's successfully saved the file rather. If we click on this, it's going to bring up our folder, and it's going to have our file in it. Most of this stuff you're not going to see, but you will see this. If you decide to use the UE model, you'll see the UE model. Otherwise, you'll see the GLB file for the GLTF file, format. So now we can open up Blender. We can delete the cube that comes in by default. And we can go over to File, Preferences, and then under Add-ons, here's where you, if you wanted to download that and figure out how to download it for the UE format, you would click here and install from disk. But if you just want to use the GLTF one, you can find it right in here. And you can just type in GLTF. It's built in. Just make sure this is checked. We can close that, and we can click File, Import, and then near the bottom you should see GLTF. Again, if you're using the Unreal Engine one, you click on that one. Essentially, they're going to be the same thing. Now, you're going to want to find where the folder is. So we can bring this back up. We can click here, copy the folder path, paste it in, or navigate to it manually. And here's our GLB file. We can click Import. If we zoom in, we can see the skate deck. Middle mouse will let us rotate around. We can look at all the different sides of it. So what I want to do, and the reason I brought it in, is that I want to see how the materials are matching up to the board. We can actually look at the materials browser over here, and if we switch to different rendering views, we can change the colors, and the actual material here is actually wheel empty, which is a little strange. But if we can change it to color, but or an image texture or something like that. But essentially, the board bottom here is is what we want to look at. And so the easiest way to do that, if we click on UV editing, you'll be brought in here. If you don't have this selected like this, you might see it like this or like that. Just click on the board, hit Tab, or you can come down here, make sure the board is selected, and go into the edit mode. You'll see all the orange lines connecting to all the different faces and the vertices. And then over in this view, you'll see a whole jumbled mess. So we only want to look at the bottom of the board. So if we actually use our middle mouse and look at the bottom side of the board, we can click off to the side. It'll deselect everything. And we can then hover over the bottom and press L on the keyboard. And it's going to select only the bottom. If we pan around, you'll see we're only selecting the bottom, right? Now this still looks strange, right? But if we come over to Fmodel again, and we look at our files, we have all these different assets and stuff. What we want to do is we want to look at the skateboards again, and we want to go to Deck Graphics, look at one of our deck graphics, doesn't matter which one. We can look at Lady Smoker. You'll see that the file size is 512 by 2048. So what we want to do is we want to click on Image, New, and we want to type in for width 512 and for height 2048. And now click New Image. We zoom out with the scroll. And now you see this looks more like the actual deck. Now this is how our board is going to map to our texture. Now if we look at existing textures for different boards, if we click on Acid Rat, you'll see it fills up the whole screen. If you have a board that's like this or a graphic like this, we don't really need to worry too much about mapping things. But for me, you know, my image doesn't look like this. It doesn't fill all the sides. It's rounded, right? So that's why I want to make sure that it's filled in as perfectly as possible. So in order to do that, the easiest way to do that is if we come over here and we click on UV, export UV layout, we can save this. I already have it saved in this folder here. Well, I'll export it again. And now if we look at that folder, we'll see this is the file it gave us. So it looks very similar to what we have here. Oops. But it's in an actual image format. So if we were to open this up in Photoshop, I'll come down here and I'll open this up. Here it is, right? And now if I was to, let's say, here's my graphic that I have online. So this is the deck that I want to recreate, the one I have in real life. And there's a product image online. So I can copy the whole thing. I can come in here and paste it. well, now I'm going to move this layer on top, and then I can kind of line it up, right? You'll see it's not perfect. I have to resize it, and if I don't resize it perfectly, you're going to see either white at the bottom, or it's just not going to look right. So that's the whole point for me to export the UV layouts, is to get a better representation of exactly how the 3D model is going to map this to the board. Instead of doing all this, though, you don't have to do any of this, like I said earlier. Instead, I have this Photoshop file, and essentially all it is, and if you want to make it yourself, I basically just took a mask. Let me open up the this again. So I took this, I used the magic select, and I made a selection around the edges here. So there's one there. I use shift and I click on these individual ones. And then I just invert the selection, or however you want to do it. But essentially now we have a mask. Like this. And we can, so we either draw in here, you'll see we're not going over the edges, right? So that's basically how this is working. You'll see this deck graphic here. If I disable this mask, it's actually filling the whole screen. But when I enable it, we get to see the edges. So I'll show you, demonstrate kind of how this works, right? So let's say I take this image offline. Here's what I want to use. I paste it in. All right. I'm gonna move it over. We want to make sure that it's inside this folder so that it gets applied by the mask. I can size it up. We can actually delete the blue thing. It's not necessary. It's just there for a placeholder. But you'll see, you know, we're not really filling in the edges. So in Photoshop, what we can do is if we hold the Alt key while resizing, we're going to resize from the middle. Right? So it kind of scales out from the middle evenly, so it'll on all sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize it up just until we kind of reach over there. I can zoom in, make sure that it looks good. Again, I'm going to hold Alt. Okay, it looks good on there. Maybe check the sides, right? Maybe I want to make it just a little wider. You know what? That looks pretty good. And you can change the interpolation if you want, whatever. Resize it, right? And now I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup. There's these bolt holes, so I'm going to use the, what is this brush called again? Healing spot or whatever. Basically, I'm just going to quickly come in here and just clean it up. But you can see how easy it is for me to line up the board, right? So now it's all done. If you have a full image or whatever, and for whatever reason you don't want the mask, you can disable it here. It's not necessary to export the file with it on. But I'm actually going to leave it on, and the reason why is that when I save this out, so I'm going to export it here. Basically, you just want to save it as a PNG. We'll just call this jury, whatever we want. It's like I said before, our icons in the store are actually 256 by 256. We want to create a new image, right? And now I can either copy this. We're not going to get the mask. So we can actually just reopen the file in Photoshop, the one that we exported. And it's going to come in just as a single layer with transparency. Then what I can do is just copy it, paste it in. We can delete the background. And now we can just kind of resize this, bring it in here, right? Here's our board. We can set up the icon however we want. In this case, if we want to make it look like the other ones, we would resize it down. If you hold shift while rotating, you can rotate it by increments. We want it at a 45-degree angle. You can also adjust the angle here. And then we can just resize this. Use the little helpful guides to kind of get it aligned in the center, however you want. This looks fine, right? So here we go. We can tweak this however we want, and then when we're ready, we can export it, and we can call it whatever we want. Now, I actually made a different type of icon. It looked like this. You know, really, you can make it whatever you want. So for this, I'm actually going to just, I'm actually just going to use this icon. It'll create a little bit of variance for us in game. But if you want just to keep it simple, you can do that, whatever you want to do. So let's close all this. We don't need this anymore. All the, crazy stuff's over with. And we're back over here again. So let's bring in our files into Unreal Engine so that we can start plugging them in here, right? So I'm going to go back again to custom gear, and you can nestle the files in however you want. What I like to do is just create a folder at the top of custom gear, and I'm just going to call it whatever my mod is called, just for an easy way to refer to it. I'm going to click in here, and now you can drag all your files in here, or you can create subfolders. I'm just going to create subfolders. If you want to put them all just right here, that's fine. But I'm going to create 3. I'm going to call it icons, materials, and then textures. So these are the 3 ones we need. So now what we can do is we can take our files that we had. Here's our texture that we made. We can plop that in here. It's going to look strange when it comes in. It's going to look all weird. But if we click on it, you'll see it looks just fine. It's just how Unreal Engine has it rendered in here. Same thing with our icon. Drag it over here. This one also is going to look weird. Especially it looks weird if you do it with a 45-degree angle. But again, if you click on it and it looks fine, it should be fine. Again, you see when I imported it, these are actually not saved. You can see is here as well. So again, we want to click File, Save All, right? So if we were to go to kind of get these files ready for the mod later, they might not show up. So again, let's make sure that we're just clicking Save All, and we won't have that problem, hopefully. So we got a couple of files in here now, a couple textures. All right, I had a slight issue with Unreal Engine. It kind of crashed on me for some reason, but anyway, yeah, basically, like I said, we have custom gear, we have our folder, here's where we have our files, we have our texture in here, we have our icon over here. We don't have any materials yet, though, but that's fine. So we can actually plug in at least one of these right now, so we can take the icon and put it in the texture, display texture here. So that's all good to go. And the next couple things we want, we can expand, again, the item materials, and we can actually start working on the 2 ones for material, wood, top and bottom. So again, we don't need to specify these, but I'm going to show you how we can do it, and it's actually pretty simple. So let's go ahead and take a look again at at our board we had reference to. Let me close this out and come back over here to our CIT file. So they're not using wood top, but they are using wood bottom, and you can see the file path is customization, skateboards, wood, default materials, wood bottom, right? So we can follow that in here, and we can find what all the other ones are. So again, let's close this. Let's actually make a new tab. So that was under customization, skateboards, wood, default, materials, and here's wood top and bottom. So if we click into either one of these, we can see a whole bunch of different ones. Again, these refer to what you see underneath the grip tape and somehow on the bottom, I'm not quite sure. But here we go, wood top, right? And again, they have a similar naming convention. So MAI stands for material instance. We don't need to care too much about what that is, but we're going to make one later anyway. And then WT stands for wood top, and then default black, right? Or blue, blue underscore B, blue, brown, green, right? All the different colors. So for our example, what we're going to do is I'm going to make a purple one, right? Because my board's already, purple, or maybe we'll do a pink one, actually. I think there's a pink in here, right? Let's see. Yep, there's a pink one here. Technically, you can click on these and open up the material. However, I do find that the material preview doesn't work right. But if you come over here for these ones, there's actually is a tint. So you can see this is what the pink color is going to look like. Here's purple R. It's kind of not much of a purple, but if you want an actual purple, the purple one is a real purple, right? So you can kind of preview it that way as well. The cube here doesn't really give you a good sense of it, though. So we want to recreate the folder path here to match this. So how do we do that? So again, we just want to follow this path that what we have here. Instead of in custom gear, though, we want it in the customization folder. So here's customization. It's under skateboards. Now we're not seeing wood here, right? So we want to create a folder for that. So let's create a folder here. Again, it's called wood. And let me delete this. We're going to recreate that later. That's something else. So here's wood. We can right click here. I'm going to refer to the path here, right? Default. Click into that. Another folder for materials. Now we have two folders. That's wood top and wood bottom. All right. Now for these two, they do have the way the material instances work is they have a parent material and they have a bunch of parameters and stuff like that. Now for this sake, we're just gonna make really basic dummy ones. There is a way where we can actually have a better reference to the material that it's based on. But in this case, we're just gonna make it really simple for you. And I might actually include something in the future for that. But for right now, here's what we're going to do. So in wood bottom, let's say we want, let's see, what are we in? We're in wood top. Let's make the wood top one first. So in wood top, we're going to right click. If we come down here to materials and textures, we can click on material instance. Now what we want to do is we want to name it exactly the same as we have it here. So it's MAI underscore WT underscore default underscore whatever color, in this case pink. Don't include the W or .u asset, just like that, just the name, and we're done with this basically. That one's ready to go. And this one's wood top. You see here, if we expanded down the material slot, we have wood top. We're gonna drag it into the top slot here for material. And now this one's set. We're already done. It's not pink here, but that doesn't matter, right? Because we're just making this as a reference to the file in game. Let's take a look at wood bottom as well. See, there's a whole bunch of here. And let's see, do we have a pink? Yep. And it's called pretty much the same thing, but it's just WB instead of WT. So we can actually just copy this and paste it in here. And then we just need to rename this to be WB instead of WT. Now technically, you could just use the same material here and here. But we're just going to do it for the sake of doing it the right way. And there might be some differences, I'm not really sure. So we're just going to do it the proper way, and we're going to create the separate one and name it properly. So now we got these two. The last things we need are, we need ones, and actually we can close these two. We need the material for our board bottom, right? This one here, the board graphic bottom. And we need our static mesh. So we can go back here again, and we can look at our static mesh. And we looked at these earlier when we exported them, right? Now you could export this mesh as an FBX file and get it in the game and get the exact one, but again, it doesn't really matter. So instead, I have a dummy cube. It's an FBX file that you can drag in here. And we're just going to drag it in the correct folder path again. So that's going to be under game, customization, skateboards. This time it's going to be under decks, default, base mesh, and then the folder. I should resize this down to kind of look at it. Just come back down here to we're under customizations, skateboards. This time we're going to want decks. Make a new folder. We haven't made that yet. Decks. And then there's, again, default. Another one, base mesh. And now here we are. We need that file. There's a dot here and it has the same name. We just need the first part of it. So here's this dummy FBX. I'm going to drag it in. It's not a skeletal mesh. It's just a regular static mesh. We can click import. We don't need to worry about this. Now it's going to create this material. You can delete that and hit force delete. And we just have this dummy cube, right? What we want to do is we want to name it the same exact thing that we have here. So it's STM, which stands for static mesh, SKXX underscore deck underscore default underscore 8000. Now, if you had a different board size, you can just copy and paste and then rename it 8500, right? Now we've got the one we need if we wanted to change the board size. It's that simple. But we're going to use this one, and we're going to drag it in, and we're going to put it under the first one here. And that's all said and done for that. Last thing we want is we want our material for our board bottom. Now, if we were to look at the board bottom material in here, the graphic bottom, we can click in here, exit out of this. It's going to open it up in a tab. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. It's a little confusing, right? So to get this to work properly, we actually have to use material instancing the way that Unreal Engine wants us to do it. Now, by default, the project that you download won't have the master material here that it's called, that session uses. But in my resources, my zip file, I will include a file that you should be able to include in your project and steps on how to do that properly. But essentially where you're going to want to put it is under Art, Master Materials, and it's right here. It's called mat_master_scratch_graph_new. So that's going to go in here. It's going to go in this folder path, essentially. And it's basically set up for us to be able to get our board working. And the reason that we would want this is so that way our board can have damages and stuff on it if we were to grind on a rail or whatever. It's going to have scratches in the bottom, and you'll see that in-game in just a little bit. If for whatever reason you don't care about that, you don't want to set that up, what you can do instead is make a material and plug in the texture the way you want it, and then just plop it in here. But we're going to do it this way just so that we have all those features that we want. So let me collapse a bunch of this stuff. We're going to go back to custom gear again. We're going to go into our mod folder under materials. Right click, and again we can go to materials and textures, material instance. And now we can name this whatever we want. I'm just going to call it MAI_jury. But again, you can name it whatever. Let's double click to open it. And now what we can do is we can click on parent here. You can click the drop down. Let's just search for Scratch. And here's Scratch Graph. We want to click on this. A whole bunch of stuff's going to come up. All we need to click on is Graph here. This is what we want. Check that. Make sure that it's checked. And now we want to come to our textures here. Here's our board texture. And drag it in over here. Our little creepy sphere should show our graphic here. We can click Save. Let's actually save all. Save all, right? And now the last thing we need to do is come over here to our material. Here's our thing here. Or we can click drop down. We can search for it this way. We can type in jury. But we can just drag it in. Boom, there it is. And now we click save. Let's just, for one last time, let's just save all. And now this is all ready to go. So to get this into our game, we just need to do a couple small things. I'm going to create a folder somewhere. I'll create it right here. It doesn't matter where, but just so that we can manage our stuff easier. I'm just going to call it mod. It's fine. It doesn't matter. And now we want to come over here into Unreal Engine and click on File, and then Cook Content for Windows. Now this little toast is going to pop in the bottom right-hand corner or whatever. This is going to start going. The first time you do this, it's going to take quite a bit of time to do it at first. Once you've done it once, it should take significantly less time. You see here it's already done. But if it does take a bit for the first time, don't sweat it. It's normal. So now we want to find those cooked files. The easiest way to do it from here is we can just right-click somewhere in here and then click on Show and Explorer. Now this is going to take us to where our Unreal Engine thing is. So this is in, again, Documents, Unreal Projects, Custom Gear. Now we don't want to be in here. We actually want to be out in Session Game. And you'll see the saved folder. Come in here. Then it's under Cooked, Windows No Editor, custom gear, content, and then this custom gear folder, we will actually are going to want to copy it. We can paste it in over here. You don't have to do it this way. I just like to do it this way. I'm just a little bit cleaner. Because what I want to do now is I want to come in here, and there's actually a couple extra folders I don't want. So I'm going to delete anything that isn't CIT in my jury folder here. And I'm going to come into CIT, and there's a couple of the extra mods and stuff in here. And we want to delete these ones as well. Now for the U asset and the UEXP file for the CIT, there's always going to be 2 of these for your mod. And let's double check our jury folder here. So we've got our stuff here. Icons for any textures, you're usually going to see 3. There's a U asset, U bulk, and UEXP. Same thing for this one here. But for our materials, there's just going to be 2. So if all those are there, we should be good to go. All we need to do is zip up our custom gear folder. So click here, click on custom gear, right click, zip it up however you want. I'm just going to use this. Zip it. Let's call it jury or whatever. Now we can open up the session mod manager. Click on our mod files over here. Now what we can do is we can drag our zip file up here. Click import. And now we see it here. It's checked. The only thing left to do is go to Steam and hit play. Now obviously, you know, setting up the mod manager and everything, obviously I hope that you've already done that. I'm not going to explain how to do that here. But we've got Steam open, we got the game running. If everything's all good, we shouldn't crash. And what we can do is we can head over to a shop. And we can go to buy skateboard gear, deck graphics. And you'll see here, you kind of already see it now, but under Creature Studios, here we have it. We have our own custom icon here. You see it's a little bit different from the other one, of the other ones, excuse me. It says Jury 8.0. And we can look at the board. It looks good, right? We can see around the edges, it's a little pink. It might be hard to see. But if we look at the grip tape, it's a little bit easier to see at the top how we have our pink on the top, right? So that's what that material gave us. So I actually already have the board. You'll notice though when I loaded it in, it didn't look like that. So that is one weird side effect of the boards. So if you load in and you have that problem, you can go to a skate shop or you can go to your apartment and then back out. There might be other ways to do it. Maybe if you change levels or something like that. But basically, yeah, we have our board. This case is already scratched up. I'm going to come in here just to turn it off. Just so that we can kind of take a look at it. But yeah, I mean, it's all in here. It looks good, right? And yeah, we didn't have to override an existing board to do it. You know, we were able to make our own stuff. And you know, as you saw, we could potentially even make our own, you know, more advanced materials. We could potentially make different models for the skateboard, include our own models. I haven't tried any of that stuff yet, but I mean, this is kind of the basics to getting your own deck. And I mean, that's pretty much it. So I know it's kind of a long video, but I kind of wanted to, I figured I'd explain things as detailed as I could, so that way, you know, you weren't just following a step of instructions, but hopefully by the end of this, you felt that you truly understand how the modding process works. I know it's kind of complicated, so, you know, obviously go back and rewatch anything. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them the best that I can. Real quickly, I'll just go over again kind of the folder path that you want to make sure everything's in. Again, big thing, make sure you're clicking save all. Anything that we create for our references is going to be under customization folder. This is where our decks, where we put that model and where we put the wood stuff, and all of our mod stuff is under custom gear. make sure that our custom stuff is under the CIT folder like this. And then we just have a clear way of getting to the rest of our textures and everything that we have here. And again, for our mesh, we want the AMXX static mesh here, 3 materials. Make sure we copy them the same way that they are in our F model. Again, you can leave these blank if you want, doesn't matter. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Make sure is unique is actually turned off. I didn't have it turned off in here. Forgot to do that, and I forgot to set the cost. So if you can do that here. So cost is how much obviously it costs in dollars in game. You can also change a couple things, max instance in inventory. Just uncheck is unique, we don't want that. And again, if we want to make those changes, we come back down here to cook. And then we do the same process again of right clicking, show and explore our session game, saved, cooked. While it's cooking, you see there's going to be a couple extra files, so give it, a second to finish before you look around. It might be still working. But again, custom gear, content, and this is the folder we want to copy. And if you don't want to copy the whole thing, you can just come in here and you can find the files, like, all right, copy these. And then we can come back to our little folder we had. And, paste them in here, replace them. And then remake the zip like that. However you want to do it, right? Drag these in, recreate it, and then hit re-import, right? But yeah, I mean that's the gist of it. I do have a t-shirt mod as well. I might make a video on that. It's pretty simple though. But if you have any other ideas for stuff that maybe you want to figure out how it works, you can't figure it out yourself, feel free to ask me. Sorry. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.